Have you ever tried to have a conversation with your child and no matter what they say, they bring it back to that same topic? Maybe it's Mario, dinosaurs, or trains. And even when they know that's not what you're talking about, they can't stop. It's not defiance. It isn't even them being stuck. It is about how their brain is processing language. I worked with a 12-year-old boy who loved Mario. And I mean, like, he loved him. We could talk about school, about his day, about what he had for lunch. And suddenly he's just telling me about Mario levels, characters, strategies. And it was actually very stressful for his parents. They loved that he was talking, sharing about his passion, but were still struggling to connect with him, struggling to manage everyday life when Mario was such a big part of their family. And here is the most important part. This child knew it wasn't related. He wanted to stay on topic, but his brain kept pulling him back. Now imagine this. You're watching this video, but in your mind, you're replaying a TV show from last night. You're trying to listen so hard, but your brain just keeps on going somewhere else. That's what it feels like. According to research, there are two types of imagination: involuntary imagination, and this is what just pops into your mind. Dreams, random thoughts, strong interests, scripts. And then we have voluntary imagination. And this is what you can choose to picture. Following a story, answering a question, holding that conversation, or imagining something new. This isn't just a theory. This is actually backed by neuroscience. Research shows that voluntary imagination is a completely different brain process to involuntary imagination. Voluntary imagination relies on the brain's ability to intentionally combine ideas into a new mental picture, something called prefrontal synthesis. This involves connections between the prefrontal cortex, which is that control center of the brain, and the posterior brain regions, where images and sensory information are stored. When these systems work together, a child can take words, build a picture, and also manipulate that picture. For example, understanding the difference between the monkey rides the lion versus the lion rides the monkey requires the brain to actively build two different mental images. But here's what's really important. Research shows that many autistic children have difficulty with this voluntary imagination system, while their involuntary imagination can be very strong. So what happens? Their brain defaults to what is easiest, right? The strongest images, their favorite topics. This is why they repeat those same ideas. They go back to the same topic. They struggle to stay in that conversation. Now, I have to tell you something. This impacts so much more than conversation, and you probably see this at home, because language comprehension also depends on this ability. And what research shows is that without a strong voluntary imagination, children are likely to struggle with understanding descriptions, following multi-step instructions, which is so important when you're trying to leave the house, combining details like size, color, and location, staying with a story or conversation. And sometimes this can be described as like tunnel vision or difficulty integrating multiple pieces of information, and sometimes executive functioning. So it definitely is not that your child isn't listening. It's that their brain is struggling to hold and build that picture that it needs. A lot of approaches are actually trying to stop the behavior. So don't talk about that. That's not what we were doing. You've told me this story about Mario. That wasn't the question I asked. I'm not talking to you about Mario. But here's the truth. You can't suppress involuntary imagination by force, because this is not a behavioral problem. It's actually a neurological process. And if anything, trying to shut it down is probably going to increase frustration, anxiety, and disengagement. But here is what I want you to see differently. If your child already has strong imagery, strong interests, and often strong language, they're telling you about these things they're passionate about. This is not a problem. This is an entry point from making progress. The goal is not to stop your child from talking about their favorite topic. Absolutely not. This is so special. The goal is to teach and develop their brain how to choose what to picture next, how to process language in the moment without getting distracted. Because when we build that, everything is going to start falling into place and changing for the better. So I want you to watch part 2, because in part 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly how you can use your child's favorite topic, how to shift from involuntary to voluntary imagination, and how to help them stay in conversations longer. So make sure you watch part 2, subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out, and I'll see you there.